I love cookies. I love cookies. I love cookies. I love cookies.
Welcome to Cookies, the world's most influential basketball podcast. I am Ben Detrick. Jordan Redaelli is on vacation. Andrew Kuo, after a long weekend of celebrating, is back on his grizzly because he takes no days off. Andrew Kuo, how are you doing, buddy?
Pretty good, man. It's 420. I'm on a different existential plane. I am chilling with some green aliens in my UFO hologram.
Wow, you are lifted right now.
Super. You have no idea, man. So lifted as if it was April 20th.
420, bro. It is the weed smokers' holiday, the toker's paradise.
Is this the best holiday of the year, or is it May 4th? May the 4th be with you. I know you're not a Star Wars guy, but...
No, I'm just a big weed guy.
Nice.
Love being stoned.
Cool. How's the weed industry doing out there? Just like there's just flying around on those ergonomic bikes delivering so much weed to our 420 revelers.
Yeah, I don't know how the weed industry is doing. I would guess that the illegal weed industry is doing fine. People are at home with nothing to do. I would guess they are high constantly.
Yeah,
why would you not be? If you're a toker, I would assume you're smoking weed constantly.
Yeah. What are the corner drug dealers doing? Are they prospering in these odd times, or are they suffering with all of us?
Well, like corner drug dealers?
Or, hypothetical, not literally standing on the corner, but, like your neighborhood provider.
I'm still trying to figure out which dealers you're trying to narc on here. Are you talking about, like, dudes who sell heroin on the street in, like, $5 stamps? Or are you talking about people who have, like, weed delivery services?
I'm talking above the weed zone. Anywhere above the weed zone. Whether that be stuff like pills, maybe some bags of this or that, just a step up.
Well, I would assume party drugs are definitely down. Like,
what about the app house party?
Who wants to be skied up at home?
These are all my questions I have. Have you tried the house party app? I've been getting been seeing a lot of that on my social, that people last weekend have been partying virtually.
My understanding is that it's just like Zoom, right?
I think so. With a different interface, the pictures look crispier than Zoom.
No, I saw people mentioning it like a few weeks ago when this whole fiasco started, and no, I'm not into the virtual party thing. But also, speaking of 420, I don't know the last time I smoked weed either. Like, it has been a really long time. Once weed got strong, I was out.
Like video games, right? It got kind of advanced.
Yeah, no, I like dirt weed. Give me some garbage weed that you can smoke for hours and you just kind of casually get higher and giggly.
That sounds nice, like a really light beer.
I liked weed when it could be gauged in beer terms.
I remember that era.
Yeah, and then once it started getting really strong, it'd be like, oh, this is New York Diesel, this is green crack, and you'd smoke like,
right.
You take a couple puffs and like, oh, I'm stoned as shit, I can't think.
Yeah, it's not green anymore. It's a kaleidoscope of weird crystalline colors.
yeah, I'm here for dirt weed. Dirt weed was great. Last time I smoked was actually probably Jamaica, and that was like years ago. Because you're in Jamaica, it's like,
yeah, you gotta do it.
You have no choice.
Yeah, your choice is to go to Jamaica, and then at that point, you're just
willing.
Yeah, it's a big mood. I've never smoked weed, man. Am I missing something?
God, you're such a narc.
I'm pro weed. I've been pro weed this whole time. Who's the narc?
Who's anti-weed?
It sounds like you are.
This argument doesn't seem to work in your favor.
Well, I am into everyone smoking weed. I'm not saying.
How did you avoid it?
I don't know. I wasn't curious. I just didn't want my brain to like. I didn't want the doors of my brain to in my mind to fly open.
Looks like the joke was on you.
Yeah, I mean, I believe that like mushrooms make people more like it works for a lot of people, and they're using that stuff for medicinal stuff now. But I've always believed it was good. I just have never smoked a cigarette or sort of like Michael Jordan in that way, Ben.
Yeah, that's true. You'd walk into a room full of
Goat.
people with weed everywhere, and you just walked back out.
I was in a hotbox room once in high school, but then realized what was happening and just kind of left and sat on the porch. It was smoky and I was coughing. I was like, this sucks. Like, we're doing this on purpose. I'm like, oh, I get it. And I just
Wow.
went outside.
And you live to tell the tale.
Allegedly.
Yeah, I don't know. I just find super strong weed above my 90s tolerance. I have a Gen X weed tolerance.
Do they have like a simplified weed? Can you like get the Tetris, Game Boy Tetris of weeds from your dealer?
I think they do have like them sort of structured by potency. I don't care enough about weed to like look into that and be like, hey, I need something in a dirt. Can I find something that's brown and dirty and costs like 20 for like an eighth?
I'm sure it's just like the food industry, supply and demand, right? Like, I just want like instant ramen. Like, go buy instant ramen then.
I want like dirty, dry Mexican weed that would cost like, I don't know, $1,000 for, like a pound.
Can't you cut it with like pizzeria dried oregano? Fragrant.
Probably.
Smells like a party, pizza party.
This has been a very anti-420 start to a 420 show.
It's been a bumpy 420 so far. Admittedly. You heard about, speaking of people smoking weed and eating stuff, maybe. Have you heard about David Chang expanding to his Fuku empire?
Yeah, I read that article earlier today. Apparently, in the midst of the, Corona fiasco, David Chang, famed restaurateur of Momofuku and several other excellent places in New York, and a celebrity chef over the last decade, he opened up his fast casual chain, which is called Fuku, and I think they mostly just sell chicken sandwiches and fries, as far as I know.
Yeah.
And they have
fingers.
Yeah, they have them in a few cities, but he opened up one in Portland that, after some investigation by locals, turns out that it's being created in some trailers from a company called Reef, which is a Miami-based ghost kitchen. And I guess the benefit of working with them is that they can move around. So if a certain neighborhood doesn't order a lot, they can shift locations within the same city to a better ordering zone. At least this is how it was explained in this story. But Portlanders, or at least some of them, seem upset. And they're like, one, our restaurant industry is in tatters like everywhere else. We're struggling. We want to support local businesses. And who is David Chang to be coming in, giving us a version of this sandwich that's being made by not locals necessarily, but by another subsidiary, and invading our turf just because we happen to have a culture that likes street food and likes, picking up goodies from street. What are they like? Just from food trucks overall. Mm-hmm. So this article does make David Chang look like the bad guy. Is that article fair?
I don't think it is. I think it's fair. Every part of this is fair to me. And David Chang poses a threat to that market because he's so famous. And I think people there are curious about this Fuku burger if they've not had it yet. It's pretty good. I think we had one in the garden last time we were there. They have a stand at MSG where the relegated Knicks perform. But I think I'm okay with him giving that a shot. And I'm also very okay with the community there maybe being like, we don't we don't want this. And every part of that step is understandable to me. It's odd because I saw David Chang give an interview on Vice this weekend, and it was a long one with him and his CEO about the state of his restaurants and the state of the restaurant world. And he painted a very dire picture. And even, like, I think he said he laid off 600 people. So it was surprising for me to hear this, but I appreciate his move into technology. He tried this place called Ando for a second in New York City that didn't quite stick. That was a lunch spot, but really focused on an app format and delivering food really quickly to office places and the beginning of dinner. It wasn't a full dinner menu, but you can order up until I think 6 o'clock. And I thought that was really interesting. I don't think it worked because of food, and maybe we're not ready for it, but we could be ready for it now. And if it's not David Chang, it's going to be someone else that really makes this work. And I can't really fault him for trying to keep his business alive.
I mean, I don't really think he did anything wrong other than potentially view this as a quick way to make some money and test out an idea. Mm-hmm. Because he's not really doing anything here. And I don't mean that in a good way. I'm saying he's like, all right, I'll throw some money and give my recipes and the food that I'm making in New York to this Miami-based company who's going to cook it up and sell it to people in Portland. I'm kind of out of the loop other than giving them chicken and sauces that are being created in New York in a kitchen here. And then it's being prepared in Portland by a Miami-based intermediary and then being sold on another intermediary via Seamless or Try Caviar or Grubhub, whatever. So, he's not really doing shit except for doing what Fuku always was, which was a money grab. It was his venture into fast casual. Not to say the sandwiches wouldn't be fantastic, but it was always a money grab in comparison to his other restaurants, which were very considered and really important to his brand. Fuku
Those are money grabs too, if you want to consider that a money grab.
Right, but he still has to go. I mean, they always have been. When he put one in Hudson Yards, when he put one in Midtown, they were always money grabs.
But then, by that definition, are all restaurants money grabs?
No. Not at
all franchise restaurants are not money grabs?
Well, that's a totally different thing. If we're saying he didn't really franchise Momofuku out, did he? How many of them are there?
There's a few. I mean, his empire is built off of franchising, right? Well, I mean, he's in charge. Franchising is the wrong word, but he's very aggressively expanded his brand.
Absolutely. And yes, that is about money, but because if you can have another restaurant generating income in another market, yes, it makes more money. So, yeah, in some sense, mm-hmm. adding more restaurants is a money grab to an extent, but it's not the same as saying I'm trying to create Shake Shack. I'm trying to put these in airports or MSG, and it's a different genre of restaurant than the one that he's most famous for. And again, this is not new either. You can go in MSG and get Jean George, also chicken maybe. Burgers?
Yeah, there's Jean George chicken dogs maybe.
Yeah, exactly. So I'm not. This is not a scathing takedown of trying to have a fast casual restaurant like many chefs have tried to do this. I'm mostly saying there's not a lot of commitment on his end to this project, so maybe it wasn't great timing. That's kind of my thought, is that you can look at it and be like, man, this is some bullshit. You're just kind of trying to flood our market with some chicken sandwiches at a time when it's sensitive, when it's not any commitment on your part. Maybe you could chill. I don't know. I don't think he did anything wrong, but I understand people in the restaurant world there saying, oh, look, an interloper who's doing nothing except having a trailer pull up that's not even owned by him, selling his chicken sandwiches at a time of crisis. Read the room, dude. I understand that blowback from local restaurateurs and people who are selling their own chicken sandwiches.
Yeah. And it kind of reminds me of a video Fiona Apple put up, I think very recently, maybe last week. And she's had a really great week. And she had a really awesome record come out, and people really gravitated towards it. And she put out a video, and she talked about how someone offered her like a licensing deal for an old song, and her gut reaction was to say no. And then she thought about it, and she was like, everyone say yes. This guilt in the back of our head to say no because it's not like the right thing to do. Everybody, we're dying out here. Just so if someone offers you an opportunity, say yes. And if you don't need the money, just give it away. If you do need the money, take the money. And she was like, I called them back and I said yes, even though it was something I wouldn't have done before all of this. But we have to change our whole paradigm and not shame ourselves into a fighting chance, which I thought was an unexpected, but something I really enjoy to hear from people, because it's like the anti-cop thing, right? It's like, actually, you need the money, and we should get over like shaming ourselves into a tough spot, a corner, you know? And not to say David Chang is in a corner, but it sounds like he is. Like, he's been very public about how he's in big trouble, and the restaurant world is in big trouble. And the Danny Meyer stuff came out too. He got a $10 million small business loan from the program, and he was shamed into giving it back, which he did, I believe, this morning. And it's a complicated thing, but people didn't really love that. And you could, you know, he has a public company. Shake Shack is traded publicly on the stock market, so we kind of know its a valuation. And he gave it back, and now they're roasting him for. I mean, they're lighter on him, but now people, you know, stuck to their story and are like, well, he wouldn't have given it back if we didn't say something, so therefore he's still complicit. So it's all very complicated.
Well, the idea that you should just say yes, that's bullshit. That's just total bullshit. Like that, I mean,
yeah.
Come on. Like
Go on.
that's obviously bullshit. Oh, well, in a time of crises, you should just say yes to anything that comes across your table. Like, of course you shouldn't. Oh, it's a Halliburton. They want to license your song for their ad. Oh, yes, absolutely. I'll take the cash. No.
I mean, this was not, the Fiona Apple take was not like a diametric take. Obviously,
That's how you presented it.
okay. Well, consider the context. It's Fiona Apple, right? So it was like an ad.
You didn't say who was offering her money.
I'm going to say it now. She didn't tell us, but it was probably something she is okay with doing, right? It was probably as big as, I guess, if I'm guessing, she didn't say, but if it was Apple, she'd be like, no, and then like, yeah. That would be something.
That's totally
you know?
different, though, to say maybe you recalibrate what you would say yes to right now. Maybe. Or maybe that's just an excuse. Like, like that to me just sounds like self-serving. Well, you know, at this point, with everything in chaos, you just take the money, you know? Like, really? Why? Why does that change anything? Again, to what you were saying, if someone's like, I really need the money, or I want to take that money and give it to people to help, that's totally legitimate. I get that.
She was like, drag the money down here and don't let it stay up there.
I think that's cool. I get that. But I'm saying to use it as a catch-all of like, you know, in a time of coronavirus, you got to sell off your stocks before the general public knows. I mean, it kind of falls under the same category of all these profiteers of saying like, well, anything goes in Corona. You got to get your, you know, it's havoc out there. Get your money, you know, price gouge on your hand sanitizer because Corona. Like, disagree.
But then there's a response, and we stop paying for the hand sanitizer, and now delis are stuck with $10 hand sanitizer, right? Like. And that's the kind of chicken sandwich thing. If people really wanted it, okay. But it turns out that maybe people in that area don't want it, and that's just what happened.
Well, you're talking about, you know, supply and demand versus like immorality and morality. I mean, I think judging from what I know your belief system are, you kind of conflate those things, and I don't. No, I'm serious. We've had this conversation a lot. Like, this is the general principles here.
I mean, I believe that morality is a slippery thing, and everyone has their own take on it. So abiding a marketplace to morality is a terrible idea.
I'm not saying that everything is reliant on morality. I'm saying
like you are.
These are two different things. Like you're saying, well,
That sounds like my take.
no, your take is that like,
Tell me what my take is.
well, your take, what you just described was that like, it's totally cool if you try to price gouge, but then maybe the market will like stick you in the ass. And you're like, sorry. And I'm like, no, trying to price gouge in a time of national crisis, global pandemic is immoral. And you're like, well, they ended up getting their just desserts. But up until then, we're making 5 times as much on every bottle of hand sanitizer. But eventually, people stop paying it. So now they are wrong.
I mean, aside from making me sound dumb, yeah, that is my point.
I don't think you're dumb, but I'm saying we've seen from the highest levels of government, we've seen horrific gouging. We've seen money, a pipeline of money just spewed towards millionaires and corporations. Like this all falls under the category of the Fiona Apple, just say yes.
Well,
because things are fucked.
Legislation as a whole should, have set the rules in place, and I think with things that we're not able to dictate the terms of, I think legislation has to take form. Absolutely, I think the Senate and House are the most important things in our country, but at a structural level of like, you know what? I think I want to start a chicken sandwich business right now. And someone's like, that's ethically immoral. I'd be like, well, why? It's like, well, I'm suffering. I'm like, that's fair. But if my chicken sandwiches don't sell, then it's on me. But if they're a success, do I have to shut down?
Yeah, I don't really know how this applies to the David Chang situation other than that I get why people are annoyed. Mm-hmm. I don't know that he did anything wrong. He's selling chicken sandwiches and selling them here, and he decided to open and try to sell them in a different market. Like, maybe it was bad timing on his part. And this is something also we don't know how long this is going to last, right? So it's like, when does it become okay to sell chicken sandwiches? Like, I don't know.
I think today.
Is it as of yesterday, it was okay. But like 2 weeks ago when he decided to do it, it was wrong. But it'll be totally cool in a month. I don't know about that kind of shit.
I mean, I think it's fine if he started 2 weeks ago too. I don't know. I cannot care about this. It's like, if people really want these sandwiches, then they should be able to buy them.
I don't really know anyone who's outraged by this except for competitors of his in Portland anyway. It was just interesting to me that he thought this would be a good time to do it and a good market and a good methodology to doing it. And it turned out that, well, we don't know. Maybe it worked. Maybe they're selling.
Yeah,
Maybe it was a masterstroke that has drawn the ire of Portland's own chicken sandwich peddlers.
For sure. And like, I'm interested, and I think it's amazing how all these restaurants are helping local hospitals here in New York, and I love it. And on my feed, I see a lot of different ways people are doing it, and I wonder if that's going to develop a small market in itself. Like, I wonder, and I hope it doesn't get to this point, because I think hospitals are feeling less of a strain these days as of today. Maybe it's going to be different in 2 days. But, what if they're like, hey, we don't need that food anymore. Thank you so much. But we have too much food and we can't throw it away and it's going bad. So we're good. We appreciate everything. And the person who delivers the food is like, well, I pay my employees to make this food and I have funding from, an angel donor to make this food. How I just have to shut down all over again. How come that person gets to deliver food to you and I don't? And I feel like all of these things that we're like deciding on the fly are very complicated actions.
Yeah, I just don't think it's that complicated when we're talking about, gouging prices or like wholesale national corruption. I just don't find them as morally
those
murky
are bad.
or as opaque as these other situations. Like, yeah, we can always look at and find a thing like, well, what if this small thing and this and that and that's like a slippery slope? Like, of course. But like on a grand scale, we're seeing huge profiteering off of this, and like to say that like rules don't count because of Corona, I think it's the opposite.
Who
I
said
think this
that?
is when you really can tell who
Yeah.
is genuinely ethical, to use a cookie's favorite term.
I mean, we're living in a police state right now, right? Like a social media police state.
What do you mean?
Like it is. Let's see, like what shame you have brought upon to certain people, right? So like a chicken sandwich shame. There's pictures of people like frolicking on the beach in Florida. DeSantis let them open again, and they're social distancing, but the shame is raining down.
Yo, what is the deal with people freaking out over the beaches in Florida being open? Like, you want to get upset about, there was like a couple hundred yokels, the hayseeds who were in Michigan or Kentucky screaming and waving Confederate flags about like open America back up. Okay, cool. Like, I don't think they're worthy of even media coverage other than like a mention.
Yeah.
But they've really hit that sweet spot where you can cover both sides while basically being like, look at this. What a shit show. And it's became like a media firestorm, as you knew it would. And the Republicans are so good at creating those also, to their credit.
Oh my God, it's their
Like-
playbook.
Like, that shit probably got more attention than like Operation Wall Street or something. It was wild. They're so good at getting attention for these nonsensical, meaningless little gestures. A bunch of guys with guns yelled at the governor's house.
Yeah.
Fucking cares. But why are people getting upset about opening the beaches in Florida? Like, the parks are open in New York. The beach is a big, wide open space. People can stay further apart from each other. It's outdoors. Like, what's this horror about the Florida beaches being open?
Yeah, I think the outrage might come, or the concern might come from, we actually don't know really enough about this virus to take those steps. I think that would be where I would come in, be like, well, this is a novel virus. It's not the 19th version of it, and it behaves in ways that we're just figuring out now. And remember, they were like, in the beginning, it was like, don't touch your face. Like, just try not to touch your face. Now that's out the window. It's like, oh, you could just breathe it in proximity. So also don't touch your face, but the language has changed to like, don't be anywhere near someone's mouth, which is a lot different than where we started. And I think the scientific community, that would be their concern, and be like, hey, we know the downside of this, and there is no upside other than mental health, which is huge. But like, the downside is a bump in numbers. And for every life, the scientific community feels like they have to take responsibility. And I think that's where it's coming from.
I feel like I don't know though, because I know what you mean. I've also seen some scientists sort of saying, well, if it's outdoors and people are socially distant, the odds of it going from one person to another are fairly low. That seems to be like one position.
Yeah.
I agree with you that like we don't know everything about this, of course. But like, to me, it's coming more, there's more of this like shaming, and it's been happening since the jump, where people like yelling out of their windows at people on the street walking their dogs. It's like the Revenge of the Nerds adult version. It's like the public scolding from like losers and like angry people who are inside. And I get it, but it is really, really lame. And you're seeing it all over the place, like de Blasio telling people to snitch on other people they see, take a photo of people social distancing and text it to the city. It's like the scolding nanny state, but it's not even like the state itself. It's like some weird version of like the Stasi, except like just bitchy.
Or
I saw
Twitter.
someone outside and they didn't look like they were far enough apart. Let me take a photo and send it to the city.
It's like a musical, Twitter Live. Bring Twitter out of your phone and into real life. But I think, the snitching part, the photo thing, that just doesn't even work to me. I'm like, what in the world is this about? Like 411. It's like, hey, there's something, like there's a busted gas pipe on my street. They're like, yeah, we'll get right to it if you can even get through to us. That just seems like an odd thing for him to be like, so I'm covered there. You don't have to blame me for that. That's just something I said. So like, you can't blame me for not saying something. But, like I believe in some sort of peer pressure, and I think peer pressure always levels out to like its water level. The most drastic pressures don't really stick, and something we can all kind of agree on kind of sticks. Like, in every social media platform, we have these kind of unwritten rules. In the meme world, we have kind of the pressures to kind of reside. Like, that meme is too old, you can't use it. It's like, I don't understand that meme, it's not done correctly, and like we kind of police ourselves that way. And I think this is kind of the same thing, but it involves life and death, kind of.
Maybe, but there's an element of scolding that people are just loving. They're just loving scolding fellow adults, and it's so bitchy. I can't stand that shit, dude. It's like, oh, look at them. They're not social distancing. Like that photo that someone put up from a farmer's market yesterday in the Upper West Side or Upper East Side. People were clearly spacing out. They're getting food. They're shopping. Everyone except for one person who's probably a sociopathic jogger was wearing a mask. And yet, people in New York refuse to socially distance. Like, you can look at the photo and tell that people aren't close. Like, it was just outrageous. This just scolding of other adults. And look, I'm not suggesting that people should be congregating without masks and living normally. No one is. Go around New York City. No one is. This idea that, once it gets nice out, people are living recklessly. No, they're not.
Not for nothing. I went out there yesterday to take a walk by Tompkins. There was not much mask wearing, which is fine. I was wearing a mask, so they don't have to.
Well, that's not true. Were people close to each other? Because as I've seen, I've walked around a lot. I go outside a lot because I'm like helping deliver lunches. I'm running errands. I'm out quite a bit. And other than certain neighborhoods in New York, I see almost everyone wearing masks and almost everyone social distancing.
In Tompkins, it was a beautiful day yesterday. It was like 60 degrees, sunny. Tompkins is amazing this time of year. And yeah, there was a lot of people hanging out, drinking, frolicking. It was a beautiful day, man. And it was not full.
You're trying to scold.
No, I'm saying I'm not scolding.
Okay. Just because people are, I've gone through McCarran. People are not generally hanging out more than in close, large groups. A few people who might be like roommates or like couples, whatever, you see them together. A few groups of friends. But overall, you do not see large groups of people at all. At all.
And this was going to be the fatigue. We're at the fatigue hump. We keep on discussing on TV and on social media more of like the death hump and the infection hump. And they say, New York City has maybe hit its peak in other parts of the country. We're worried about Florida and the retirement community there. And all these places have different projections off of different models. And they say New York City may be at its apex. But what they don't discuss enough, I think, is like our ability to deal with boredom and rage. And we need a little bit more from them. Like, there's hotlines now that you can call if you're feeling like really angry about something or worried or stressed. But I don't know what we need. We need more like Last Dances. We need more entertainment maybe, or ways to communicate ideas, because I think we're really reaching a fever pitch of boredom where people in the middle of America are arguing if this is constitutional or not. And I'm like, we're up to 40,000 deaths. That's a lot.
My stance on this has always been about change your behavior. That's always been my position. I've never been like a huge advocate of stay inside for 10 days in a row, venture out once to get groceries, and then run back home. And I'm not saying I'm right or wrong. I'm just saying that has been my stance. Has been like, change your behavior. If they say we should wear masks, wear masks. If they say we should be 6 feet apart from people, be 6 feet apart from people. Like that has been my stance overall.
I'm almost like you have to preemptively do this. Like we knew we would have to eventually all wear masks. So I'm like, they're not telling me to, but I'm just gonna do it.
I mean, again, you have your stance, and I respect it. You know, I'm saying for me, it's been like what they say to do. Okay, cool, good enough. And I think it's about changing behavior. It's about limiting the amount of people that you come in contact with on a daily basis, and that distancing has been effective so far, and hopefully it'll continue to be. But I think you're right about sort of the hump of boredom at some point, because for me, and I mentioned this last show, so bear with me, the biggest problem has been creating a lame routine when there was still new information and we were scrambling to figure out what we were going to do, you know, in March. Days went by really slowly, but it was still sort of unfolding and kind of interesting in a weird way. And now we've adjusted to it, and in my mind we're just kind of all like living like lames, where you're like, oh cool, you wake up, you go about your day, you don't see your friends, you don't go out, you don't do anything. It's hard to exercise unless you're a nihilistic jogger
Or DJ Premier.
or you're doing head spins like Ellen. But yeah, that to me is the biggest issue. It's like this virus has forced us to live like lames. And you're like, shit, man. All the things I like to do, I can't do. And of course, that's a small price to pay to save lives, you know, when we're talking about the people who are on the front lines of this, the people who are literally dying of this, the people who's...
Even your own.
But I'm saying people whose like livelihood, people whose entire lives are jeopardized and imperiled by this virus. I'm not talking about that in my situation. I'm saying, to me, the hard part, if you were not on that level with this thing, it's not the anxiety, it's not fear of walking around. None of that stuff doesn't really bother me that much. Like, it sucks, but it doesn't bother me. It's like you have to live a way that you don't like. And I'm like, this sucks. Other people might say, I'm totally cool with staying at home. I'm totally cool with not going out. I don't like bars anyway. I don't go out to parties. I barely like restaurants, but I'm scared. And that could be their way of addressing this, you know, this situation.
Yeah, I never thought about it in terms of like what my ideal life would look like in terms of like being lame or cool. But I get where you're going with this. I think this is a really like odd is the most polite way to say it. I have to be, whatever this is, I just have to do it because something bad is happening out there. And like pushing the envelope is, there will be people who want to push that envelope being like, well, I can go to the beach because I'm technically 6 feet away from you, before they change the rules to 10 feet, you know? And I think there has to be space for people to do that. But in this kind of viral pandemic, I think I would like to be radically safe, you know? Like, I don't know, the people dying is a whole different metric than like pushing the envelope of like a theory or a basketball game or a painting, you know? I'm just like, oh, my neighbor might have this virus. I was online to go to a grocery store yesterday, and somebody was behind us 6 feet. It was all good. And his friend walked by, and his friend was like, how you feeling? He's like, 6 days, no symptoms. And I'm like, holy shit, this is really fucking real, man. He's like, I feel awesome. He's like, how you feeling? He's like, I'm also symptom free now. And I'm like, whoa, this is on Houston and Essex, man.
Yeah, if you had symptoms 6 days ago, you should not be out of the house, my guy.
I thought the same exact thing, and I'm like, I'm relying on other people to take care of themselves so we can all do this in some controlled manner. But this is kind of like when people get a little radical, right? And be like, well, yeah, this doesn't apply to me because I don't feel anything. And the doctor's like, yo, can you just stay in for 15 days, possibly 20?
Yeah, that's just people like being reckless and selfish. I agree.
Yeah.
and that's, if you are like, oh, I was sick and I had it, and like, then you should not be going out for weeks, dude. Like, go back home.
I know, and I don't know. I judged a book by his cover, and he was a little bit older, so I was happy he was not showing symptoms. But it probably looked like he was one of those classic East Village guys, who live in a walk up, And I was like, it doesn't read to me like you have a family. He seemed like he was doing his thing, And I'm sure he wants to see his neighbors, and he wants to go out and like shop for fresh food. And I hear that, and it's a really tough spot because we joke about the police state, but there is no, like, we cannot go into a lockdown with like cops, So we have to rely on people being like, don't do it, because we don't want the extreme version of that, which is China.
Yeah, it's funny because a few people have hit me up who left New York, before it was sort of announced that people should not leave, and some of them have been like, oh, I feel guilty about leaving. I wish I was there. I'm like, no, you miss New York, and you miss your apartment, and you miss your friends. But, like, that's not what's happening here. It's not the same as 9/11 or the blackout or Sandy. There's no civic spirit unless you really enjoy clapping out of your window at 7 p.m.
Yeah. Have you been doing that?
I mean, once in a while. If I'm trapped outside, I look like a seal.
Yeah. There's people, across the way that really bang on pots and pans and stuff.
I was over by Southside, and they were really taking it seriously in Southside Williamsburg. People were like lighting off like M80s and stuff. I'm like, respect.
It's sweet, and it's also a slick way to let off some steam.
But overall, this is not the New York that the people who left are imagining. Like, you're missing it the same way we're missing it, and we're here.
Yeah.
Like, oh man, New York. No. It's not that. It's just a little apartment. And if you're upstate somewhere and you, like, the weather might stink, but you got fresh air. You are not around people. You have room to walk and play, and you can pretend you're like frontiersing it and shit. If you are, if you went home, you're at your parents' house, cool, get some time in with your folks. But New York, as you think about it, is not the same. It's not the New York that you were thinking of.
Yeah, it's weird out there, man. And it's not going to come back like a ribbon cutting. I think it's probably changed forever. But, to your point, in a small way, like, I don't know if people miss New York. They miss their stuff. They miss their apartment, They miss being away from their parents. And I think...
For sure.
I miss, like, I walked down Avenue A yesterday, and I miss... There's Mass Bookstore, and I miss going in there, and I have my little Chinese takeout spot, and it's shuttered, and these little things, and there's still people in the park, and there's people walking around, but it'll look different forever, and it's okay as long as, like, we can have a chance at recreating it. The government's not really helping us. November can't come soon enough. I really want a different White House in there desperately, but I think it's going to take a really long time, but I don't know, some things will survive.
I don't know. I don't have that sort of premature whist about it where it's like it'll never be the same. I don't know.
It might. No, I think our lives will look very similar to what we thought, but like we said last episode, it's like people are here shopping, eating, drinking, and you talk to people who are running those businesses, and they're like, we can't sustain this. It's down 20%.
Yeah, I think that kind of thing will happen for sure. And we were saying that the underpinnings of change have been accelerated by this. You mentioned the Fiona Apple album. What'd you think of it?
It's pretty good, I thought. Someone tried to ruin it for me almost successfully. One of our buddies on Twitter being like, this is slam poetry. And I'm like, no, don't say that to me. but I thought sonically it was cool. I'm kind of a fan of hers. I love her weird tonal kind of jumping around. I can't claim that like I rock that album like constantly, but I listened to it the night it came out. It's pretty good, man. Did you get a listen?
I like it. I'm with you. The songs that I don't necessarily gravitate towards are the ones with like ferocious dynamic and tonal and tempo changes.
Yeah.
Where they're just
very jazzy.
you know, like
Yeah.
she's doing a thing and it's cool, but those are not the ones that I personally love.
Yeah.
You know, I thought her ones like the title track I thought was cool.
Mm-hmm.
I thought Under the Table. I'm just looking at Ladies. I thought the ones that were more conventional in terms of song structure.
Yeah.
Those are the songs I enjoyed the most. One thing that I do like about the album is that it sounds like it was all sort of recorded in an hour. And I say that in the best possible way. Like her voice is very consistent. It doesn't feel like, oh, there was a bunch of different sessions with different people, and it feels like a coherent album in that, like she could have just done it back to back to back to back in the same session. And I feel like those are the albums that I always like the best.
I believe she labored over it too, and I believe she pushed up the release a little bit. I think, but she definitely pushed up the release because they were gonna have a long lead in. She was like, "Put it out tomorrow," which was smart, I think.
Yeah, those albums that have sort of very delicate, I guess almost like airy sort of moments between songs that sort of like cohere things together. I don't know. That's what I like about it. Like you listen to it and it feels not like a live show at all, but it bonds together and it feels like an interesting artist giving you something, and it doesn't feel sutured together artificially. And you know, the albums like talking about like rap stuff. The albums that I always love are the ones like Mobb Deep's Infamous or like Jeezy, you know, like 101 stuff that sounds similar. And it's like one person just like giving you like a whole bunch of shit that's in their head and just like purging it.
And DaBaby's suffering from that a little bit because he put out an album and everyone's like, it sounds the same all the way through. I like Fiona Apple because I really enjoy maximalist things, and I feel like every album that she does is like a triple cheeseburger. You know, I'm just like, whoa, you crammed Lord of the Rings into this. You drew maps and you went to different places, and there's different, you know, dwarves everywhere, and it feels like a world, and I love artworks like that. It's a bit like a movie where there's like 15 locations. I really enjoy that stuff.
I like that description of it in terms of it's a world. And I like from a lyrical bars standpoint.
She's got bars.
She uses interesting word choices. And I think that's amazing because you actually listen to her waiting to hear what she's going to say. And one of the biggest problems I find with like listening to like incredible soul music from, you know, the 60s and 70s, stuff that I really love, it's that you already know what every like rhyme is going to be. You already know which 100 words are going to get like recycled, like me, see, alone, home. Like love, above. It's like all the same stuff. And with her, you're actually listening and saying, what is she going to say after this? Like, okay, that's a cool turn of phrase. I get what she means. All right, you know, I didn't want to go to that dinner. Cool, I get it. I understand that. And I think Frank Ocean does the same thing for me. Mm-hmm. Like I listen to what they're saying because I feel like they're trying to say something in a way that's outside of the parameters of that very rote songwriting.
Yeah, I can go both extremes with that. You know, I've been kind of watching that NBC show. It's like The Voice, but songwriters. And they just kind of try to write Ed Sheeran, Casey Musgraves hits. And I really enjoy that. I'm like, it's like, okay, that's a predictable word. Just change it a little bit. And they're like, right, that's where you go. And that's a really cool thing to see too. But I agree. It's like, and that's what makes an artist like Fiona Apple kind of unique. She's a standalone to me. There's no genre of music that she does. You can call it like theater kid music, but she is unique, I think. But I really love also a beautiful, perfect pop song. Like one of my favorite songs of all time is the Yeah Yeah Yeahs, you know, Maps. And that chorus is beautiful to me, but those words are really simple, like painfully simple. And I'm like, how come I didn't think of that? of course, because she's a genius. But like, I love sometimes when you can predict what's going to happen, and it's like there's a beauty to that too.
Absolutely. I just think there's room for both. So
For sure.
you know, when just taking it to hip hop, because that's like what I know more about. The stuff that I like most of the time is when there's color, in the same way as when you read a story and they give some details about where you are and location. You know, would Breaking Bad be the same show if it wasn't in the Southwest? Maybe, but it wouldn't feel the same. Or
Breaking
The Sopranos
Bad,
would be different if it wasn't in Jersey. And it's just those background details and that make something interesting. And I feel like in songwriting, give me like a place, give me some presence, give me some color. And that's important to that idea of being brought into a world. And, you know, someone like French Montana, when he first came out, it was very New York centric.
Amazing.
And then as he got more and more successful, he kind of stripped out all of like the New York isms, whether it was like location based and like lyrics or references or even the style of production. And he just kind of became like a rap guy. And like, I don't know, I like regionalism. I like Ghostface talking about like a small coffee shop in Soho or whatever, something in Park Slope, like Stapleton projects. Like I like location.
Yeah, me too. And I always joke around and say, like, there's not a single song I dislike that name checks a town or a state or city. As soon as you mention a place, you got me. And I think it's like, on one hand, super like kind of like romantic or picturesque, but it sets up a story in a different way where it no longer is just personal. It contextualizes the personality and, you know, rap about what you know, sing about what you know. And if you're just like West Virginia, I'm like, go off, John Denver. Like, tell me about it.
Like when Biggie said Gloria from Astoria. It's like, look, we get it. She's
That's
only
cool.
from Astoria because her name is Gloria. Like,
Yeah.
like, we get it. It's a rhyming thing.
Yeah.
But still, it places a person. Gloria from Astoria. Yeah. She's by like the Greek spot that, you know, has the delicious
Jenny
octopus.
from the Bronx. Yeah.
You know, like she's from Astoria. Yeah, it's hard to get there. It's like a really annoying neighborhood. It's kind of like North Queens. Yeah. It's Gloria.
Yeah.
And like it places the song. And,
Vampire Weekend does that a lot too.
dude, I'm a sucker for it. Just reference a street.
Yeah, it's cool, for sure. Reference a local restaurant, a hospital, a famous building. I'm down. Yeah, I like all that stuff, and that's the kind of mapping we're talking about, right? Like you're creating kind of points of reference in a story or a song that I just love. Like, and shout out to J.R. Tolkien, but I think he was the first person to introduce a map before telling you a story, which I love.
Maybe. I could not say.
I believe he was.
Well, speaking about location, basketball podcast, everything has been about Chicago over the last couple days.
The CMM.
The Chicago Media Mafia, Barack Obama, Oprah Winfrey, Jerry Springer.
Wilbon.
Is he Chicago?
Yeah, he wrote about Jordan. That's how he became famous.
Yeah, you're right.
He reminds you as a lot.
Yeah. Okay, fair. Facts. So ESPN's Jordan/Chicago Bulls 1998 season documentary entitled The Last Dance, which was coincidentally something that Phil Jackson actually called that season at the time. What were the odds? Debuted last night on ESPN, and it was a must-see event for the basketball community because we have not had a collective must-see event since the season ended. Horse, nah. Video games, nah. But this became it. We gotta watch it. We gotta watch The Last Dance. You gotta watch it in real time. It was a scramble for cable logins, Disney Plus trial memberships, illegal streams, if those things even exist.
I heard.
People were scrambling to watch the first and second episode of The Last Dance on Sunday night.
Yeah.
Andrew Kuo. What did you think? Would you recommend this to your friends? What did you think? What's your immediate takeaway?
I 1000% would recommend it to anybody. For basketball nerds, it was especially enjoyable because of the revisionist history. We're watching A+ propaganda at work.
Go off.
It's like they left out a lot of stuff and just cherry picked certain things.
Wait. To be fair, and I never want to stop a rant, we are only 2 episodes into 10.
So what I'm referring to is they refer the day Michael Jordan became a Michael Jordan was when he won a championship at UNC, and then he went to the NBA as the 3rd overall pick. I'm like, well, what about the 2 seasons at UNC that he lost? Like, we don't talk about that. It just like kind of selects things, and whatever news network you prefer, I think someone else would accuse that network of framing a certain point of view. And Michael Jordan, he co-signed this. Like, he released the footage, and he kind of had a hand in this. He picked the director to handle the footage that he'd been sitting on, and we knew this would kind of lean in his favor. And how could it not? It's the 4th best player of all time. It's on ESPN. It's 10 hours. Of course it's going to be a fluff piece. So, but we saw that in action, and it was like, talk about a song that you can predict the next word of. We were just watching that for 2 hours last night, right?
I guess I had hoped there would be some footage that would be like almost shocking. Oh, we just don't have that. And I did not, to this point, see anything that I was stunned by or was particularly memorable in terms of like novel footage.
Like a Tex Winters, like furious, like out, like Tex Winter throwing a chair across the locker room. We didn't see that.
Like John Paxson railing lines. Like, we didn't get to see that.
Horace Grant subbing his twin brother in for a game where he actually had the flu.
Yeah, those are the kind of things that I would like.
Yeah.
But I thought from an entertainment standpoint, it was good. You know, it was, of course, a lionizing vehicle for Michael Jordan's greatness, as we all knew it would be. And the lead up of, you know, Jordan over LeBron enthusiasts, like, began early in the day or maybe the day prior, and they made their presence felt across social media. But there was some stuff such as every time someone would talk about young Jordan, it was like, he came into the gym, he was 15 years old. I was like, this is the best player who's ever lived. Like, everyone who saw him suddenly was like, yeah, you know, when he showed up at, North Carolina, I looked at him like 10 minutes and I said, this guy will go down as the greatest basketball player in the history of the planet, at least until LeBron comes along.
Right. It's like Dwayne Wade said it, and he played with LeBron. I'm like, Dwayne Wade grew up in Chicago, man. His dream was to play on the Bulls. Of course he's going to say that. And
but it's just a contest to say who identified his all-time greatness first.
And he wasn't that controversial of a 3rd overall pick. I think Sam Bowie was just like, okay, you pick Sam Bowie over Jordan. He's bigger. You know, they prioritize big men.
It was just because they had Drexler.
Yeah, exactly. And no one really argued with taking the Dream number 1. Like, he was the best player out of college for sure. And the era that gets washed over quite a bit for me, and I think we're past that in the documentary, was Jordan was maligned kind of in comparison with Magic Johnson, because Magic Johnson had won all those championships with James Worthy, and Jordan was more compared to Dominique Wilkins, being like this extraordinarily gifted dunker who had all the flash but none of the will to win. And we kind of gloss over that in history, and the documentary certainly glossed over it. And where I was missing in the first, I mean, we're 1/5 of the way through, it did not convince me that he was stepping, it did not build up his rivals big enough. We did not contextualize the NBA when he entered as a rookie as who were the powers that he overcame. It almost seemed like he invented the NBA, which is not true, because Allen Iverson
I was about
did.
to say, it was invented several seasons later.
Exactly. And I think we just glossed over that kind of, like, if the BMM want to talk about Larry Bird, let's talk about who the players on the board were when MJ came through and
Yeah, what did we
allegedly
get? We
took
got like
over.
Sidney Moncrief being like,
Yeah.
I've guarded some good guys, but woo.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I was like, wow, this guy's good.
Yeah. Paint the picture, right? Like, where's Dr. J? Where is, like, talk about Bill Russell. Like, can we get 5 minutes in a 10-hour documentary of context?
Kareem was playing.
Yeah, totally. I mean, I wanted more Magic Johnson because he was the one, and he had so much early success. He won a championship as a rookie playing center. Like, can we talk about how the Lakers ruled the land, and then Jordan came out as a 3rd overall pick and looked pretty promising?
One thing that I came away with after 2 episodes of this was that, do I think he wanted it more? Yeah, sure. Okay, whatever. He wanted
Sure.
it more. My takeaway is that Michael Jordan, of course, is a dick. But
Of course.
maybe him being a dick is actually wildly overrated.
I'm down for this.
I was looking at him, I'm like, honestly, just seems kind of like a cocky, like, performative jackass.
Yeah,
like I
he's
wasn't-
just a jerk.
Oh, he used to ride these guys and call him Crumbs. I'm like, yo, he's a dick.
Yeah.
Like, we all know guys who are jerks. I didn't view it as this deeply toxic guy. And I was prepared to say, well, look, if you want to talk about, Jordan's greatness and you want to tie it to him being awful, well, sure. Maybe that's how he needed to motivate himself, by being a jerk.
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean that being a jerk is tied necessarily to being great for anyone else. So did Kobe also become greater by being a jerk? Maybe, but that's also like self-fulfilling. That was what he used for himself. Would LeBron be better if he was a jerk? Absolutely not.
No.
They're different
LeBron is
people.
perfect. Yeah.
Are you better as a teammate if you are really hard on young guys? No, definitely not.
This is results bias, right?
Exactly. So if MJ, and I'm giving him this benefit, that he needed that chip on his shoulder in order to become the best player he could, that may not be true at all. But I'm just going to give him that. It doesn't mean that like being a dick or being cruel and hard on your teammates lends itself to championships. Because I don't think anyone would really agree that the best way to get your young players to develop into excellent players is to ride them mercilessly. Like, no one even thinks that.
I know.
So what should we do with the rookies on your team? Oh, I say we're like really nasty to them and like pressure them all the time and like physically abuse them and like that'll make them tough and good later. You're like, no. Let's encourage them and like make them love basketball and want to be in the gym and get better. Let's not verbally abuse them and humiliate them. No one would say that.
Did Jordan make 5 players in his 6 years of championships better?
I mean, look, other than B.J. Armstrong, no young
Fair.
guy who came through that team over the next 6 years became
Brad Sellers.
even a good player.
Yeah.
Sellers was before that, but he
Okay.
he was infamously tormented by Jordan.
Yeah.
And you look at all those other guys that came through there. Like Scott Williams played some, but most of them were just bums. Just straight up bums. And that may be Jerry Krause, who we'll talk about in a second.
Except Pippen.
But post B.J. Armstrong.
Mm-hmm.
So basically you had the draft that had Pippen and Horace Grant. And the next season you had B.J. Armstrong and Stacey King, who was like 6th overall. And
Ooh, that's
from
high.
From that draft onward, they didn't get anything out of the draft while Jordan was there. So anyway, my whole point here, though, is that I'm thinking maybe this whole thing about him being this horrible competitor, like toxic personality, I'm like, he just kind of seems like a dick, like someone you know. Like,
Of
we've all been
course.
on basketball teams with guys like that. Oh, yeah, he's the guy who, like, you crack jokes and you, like, look sour and gives you, like, a nasty expression. And you're like, that's just his shtick.
That's Charles Oakley, Knicks legend, playing in this YMCA.
But that clip of Scott Burrell, or however he said his last name.
Yeah.
You know, he's like, can I get a hug? And Jordan kind of gave him a look and everyone laughed. Like, that's Jordan's shtick. His shtick is being a jackass.
with Ron Harper, who was a well-respected player.
Yeah,
right?
all the stuff that he was yelling at people, I'm like, I've played on teams, and that's the kind of shit that you do.
Yeah.
People and coaches yell at each other. Dude, what are you doing? You got to go through on the cut. No one takes it personally.
Yeah. Would Jordan have been the best overall player if he was nicer?
I'm saying he could have, but I'm just giving him the benefit of the doubt that Jordan needed to be that guy to be who he was. But if he was like incredibly pleasant, he probably would have been exactly the same.
Yeah. And that's what I mean by propaganda. Like, and we could predict this. And I was curious too. The interns were kind of calling this weeks before this went on. It's like, oh, it's going to be about, they had a lot of success, but it wasn't as smooth as you think. And there was a lot of emotional turmoil, but they succeeded in the end. Like, it seems like we're ready for 8 more hours of that. And what surprised me the most is dragging Scottie Pippen through the mud and even taking shots at Jerry Krause, who, in my opinion, ends up winning this whole first 2 hours because he articulated this entire thing. And he stretched to get Pippen. He kind of manipulated Pippen into taking less money. It was like a kind of a masterstroke in diabolical GMing, right?
Okay, so let's talk about Krause for a second. And let me just set the table by Krause was a short, fat man. And the shots of him next to players are quite humorous because he's a little Jabba the Hutt guy.
And he's white.
And he's white next to these towering athletic freaks. And he's so deeply uncool and unattractive and square and like, he has kind of a melting face.
I read on Wikipedia
grubby.
He left the team because of complications of obesity. On Wikipedia it says that.
Yeah, so he's an unlikable character to begin with. And if we are to take the jock perspective on this show, it's that there was a war between the players who are actually out there on the court and winning these games and had to do it with the front office who was attempting to break them apart. And that's the entire premise of The Last Dance, was that Krause had announced that Phil Jackson would not be returning. Mm-hmm. And with that news, it became clear that the team would probably be fractured and splintered apart as a result of that, leading to, in Phil Jackson's terminology, this being The Last Dance. So go back to what you were saying, though, because it is framed as Krause decided to break up a 6-time championship team. They don't really explain why.
Or 5-time at the time, right?
Yes, sorry, 5-time going into that. Mm-hmm. And they don't explain why exactly, why Krause decided to do this, other than that, like, vaguely they thought they should rebuild, which is also insane. Who the fuck has a 6-time champion, 5-time champion, and says, yeah, we might rebuild? Who does that?
Yeah, I think he was just like playing a little bit of chess, and they mentioned it briefly. It was like the impending Scottie Pippen pay day, and they go back a lot to Scottie Pippen not earning his on-court value as maybe the second best player in the NBA. And Jordan throws him a bone a little bit. I'm just saying Jordan directed this. I'm just going to talk as if Jordan had executive decisions here, because he says, like, I've never won without Scottie. And that's where the compliments end. And then he rakes Scottie through the coals as being like this sullen, unhappy Robin to his Batman and wanting his payday. And Krause knew there was unrest there. And his only option was to kind of trick Scottie into playing for less money. And he kind of got it done.
So the context was that Scottie Pippen signed a 7-year, $18 million deal at a time right before the league really exploded in popularity and in economic value. So very quickly, as Pippen became one of the best players in the NBA, his contract went from being under market to outrageously under market. And I think they mentioned, what was he, like the 100th highest paid player in the league or something, whatever it was. He basically was making, $2.5 million a year when his value was probably something like $20 million a year. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So the example that they gave And honestly, man, I think Pippen is to blame.
Oh, for sure.
He decided that he wanted to hang out during the summer, and have a good time, and then would get surgery and rehab it during the season on the Bulls' dime. And it was a clear middle finger to Jerry Krause. And then later on the bus, he gives him an actual like middle finger on the bus. Or maybe it was verbally, but whatever. He's basically like, fuck off. And that was the course of underlying tension on the team, was that you had Phil Jackson leaving, which was Krause's announcement. And then you had a contract for Pippen, who was, again, egregiously underpaid. I just don't understand why the Bulls created this situation.
Well, I forget the exact reason, but Jordan had a very tenuous relationship with the front office too, right? And I forget if that was about his contract. The complication, and this is 8 hours are coming, but there was a lot of behind the scenes things that went on that we'll never know about him taking a year off, him arguing with the management about personnel and also money. And I wanted to know more of that, but as you know, we can't expect that from a Jordan produced thing or co-signed thing. So there was tensions between the team, which is just those two guys, and the front office. And we didn't hear much from the Jordan side of it, but we heard a lot from the Pippen side of it. And maybe that'll be clear moving forward in this documentary, but there was a labor worker issue here, right? I mean, a labor management issue.
For sure. And that's how the whole premise is set up, that there was a fracture between a championship team and the front office, which is unique. You normally don't seem, by their telling of this, that you normally don't have a front office with its GM at odds with the stars of the team. And that was how they more or less structured the first two episodes, behind giving us the backstory for Scottie Pippen and why he took a below-market, long-term guaranteed deal. And, you know, Jordan's backstory was that Jordan lost faith in the front office when they put him on a minutes restriction and sat him in the final seconds of a game because he thought they were tanking. It was that Jordan thought tanking was wrong and it would hurt the team.
Boomer.
It was very much like winning culture. But also from Jordan's perspective, you can understand the anger.
Right, you're not. Yeah, it's not like, management.
I'm the best player on the planet, and they're like, sit down for the last 10 seconds, and you're like, oh, you're trying to lose. Like, I get it, and you know, it's
Pippen's famous for doing the opposite, right?
Yep, and the context of Jordan being the ultimate winner and being betrayed by the organization who was tanking, like that has some, you know, obvious sort of reference points in modern basketball. But I also do understand Jordan be like, these fucking guys, like, put me in the game. If we lose, at least lose with me. I'm Michael Jordan, man. I get it. And
he
then
was such a simple tactician, man. That's such a simple ass move to be like, I am the virtuous one. You are not virtuous. I'm like, oh, we're trying to save you, dude.
Yeah, except they should have been like, look, if we lose, it's okay, but at least let Jordan take the final shot. It's okay.
Right,
like they did screw up on that. They did screw up.
Right.
And then they talked about how Jordan was angry that they traded Charles Oakley, but did concede that was the right move and it made them a better team. But he did not seem to have forgiven him from a friendship standpoint, like a betrayal of like his enforcer was traded. But he did later concede that it was this right strategic move for the team.
Can we talk about the footage that they used for this? Like, for example, Game 2 of the first round in '86 versus the Celtics, I think the final score was like 139 to 136. I forget, and it went into overtime, and they were like, the Rakim was playing. There was Boom Bap. It was Larry fucking Bird. It was Kevin McHale. They were like, yo, this Jordan guy's tough. And then they played this footage. I'm like, yo, Quavo could fucking school you guys, man. Like, it's like they called out Rick Carlisle. It's like, Carlisle's getting eaten alive out there, whatever they said at the time. And I'm like,
It was something like put Rick Carlisle in a diaper.
yeah, something dumb. And you look at that footage, and I'm like, yo, these guys are just like standing flat-footed with their arms up. And it made me think of like the Wright brothers, like inventing the airplane. And it's just like, yo, these guys got off the ground. It's insane. I just look up, and these two brothers are off the ground. Now we're like, yo, the leg space on Delta sucks. And like, we've evolved so fast to like Kevin McHale looking up at Michael Jordan dunking. He's like, what is happening? The dude just dunked.
No, they seem to have been fully unprepared for someone who had a quick first step.
Yes, yeah.
Like they'd be there, as you said, like, you know, arms akimbo, and he'd just like take a step right, and they'd be like, oh my goodness, where'd that man go? And then he'd be like flying in for a jam.
Yeah, someone like driving with their offhand and Carlisle just tumbling to his left. It's just like, it was so funny because they're, you know, obviously they're trying to paint how legendary these players were, except the paradox is you have to show some footage from the games. And I'm like, don't show it, man. Just cut to rap music, you know? Just like have Mark Wahlberg talking about the 86 Celtics, because even Mark Wahlberg could start on that team.
I mean, they just looked so white.
It was optically very jarring.
It was like at all times there was at least 3 white dudes on the court for the Celtics.
McHale, Ainge,
Bird.
Carlisle, Bird. Yeah.
Walton. They were so slow.
Yeah. All of them had knee pads on, just like covering from like achy surgeries, and like their hands up being like, yo, did you just see that young buck dunk from 4 feet out? Like, what?
I mean, like, no mistake about it. Other than Jordan's little pull-up jumpers, which his elevation is really outlandish.
Yeah, it's cool.
But, you know, he's doing nasty shit. Like, you know,
Yeah.
like quick little, but his little, like, in between the legs 3 times, it was like dangling the watch and someone in a cartoon.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
oh, he's hypnotized. Yeah.
Yeah.
But, but Jordan obviously was like on such a different plane.
Yes, he
no
was
pun
advanced.
intended for your previous analog there. But he was so obviously different from anyone on the court.
I know. In like, I was watching that weird global concert thing, and LL Cool J was there, and the format doesn't really favor old school rap, you know? It favors songwriters and lip syncers and melody. And, you know, some of, I think, our biggest pop culture celebrities are rappers. And this kind of, it made me feel bad for LL, where he had to get up there like, you know, please help our, you know, our first responders, and he had to do that part instead of rapping like his old songs or someone else's songs. And it made me think of The Last Dance, because if I told you LL Cool J was one of the most influential rappers ever, and he was regarded as not just a chart topper, but he laid out the groundwork for what was to come, you'd be like, holy shit, he must be amazing. And you heard his album, you'd be like, I don't get it. You lost me. You know, like, he's not good. We can predict his rhymes. He's slow. There's not much, you know, color in his storytelling. And that's what watching an 86 playoffs game reminded me of.
Yeah, I saw some people be like, oh, wow, they matched the music with the year it happened. I'm like, wow, that's incredible. Wow.
Like 120 BPMs, man.
Just amazing that someone who was like doing this professionally would manage to sync up the year with the songs that were out. And really, really remarkable to have that kind of intuition and foresight. One thing that was weird on that topic, though, was that they were playing like Biggie Hypnotized during one scene from like whatever it was, like 98, 97.
Yeah.
And then they were playing like Mo Money, Mo Problems at one time.
Yeah, it was weird. There was some Puff action going on. A lot of New York stuff.
Weirdly, I have never really tied those things together, even though it is time-wise completely accurate.
It's
If you had said like, you know, 97, 98, like, okay, Allen Iverson, Jadakiss, The Lox, like, makes sense. But for some reason, like, MJ and Biggie do not seem like they're from the same generation in my head.
This documentary is not for nerds. This documentary is for a broader entertainment. It's Disney.
But they were right. But I'm saying I don't associate those things at all. It was very strange to me. I'm like, Jordan winning finals seems like it's a different generation than Biggie Smalls, but they clearly are not.
I know, and like it's wild to think that the first '90s hip hop records was almost like 30 years ago. 30 years. Like there was an interview someone dug up of, I believe it was Stretch or Bobbito, asking Jordan if he knew who Rakim was, and Jordan was like, "I don't listen to rap," and that was already a disconnect. So now we have an extra disconnect from people who weren't even born when Jordan was around.
Well, what I think it is, and we're just talking this out, is that basketball and rap were not at all connected in terms of the basketball side until maybe like Iverson. And the league started seeing hip-hop as something not to be terrified of, but potentially could be embraced and make the sport cool and more successful. Because, like, prior to that, I just don't associate basketball with rap at all. Of course, you know, you had the rap side with Curtis Blow or Master P. People would reference, you know, Biggie, like anyone, Michael, Jordan, Jackson. You know, like, basketball was discussed in rap a lot. The famous Das Effect song, Lucy's, about pooping your pants, and about Paul Pierce. But the NBA did not accept rap in my mind at all. It was like it was so different than it is today.
And that's what I was kind of looking for, where I was disappointed in the first 2 hours of this documentary. I wanted something like beautiful, kind of. You know, I think of the Fab Five documentary. I thought that was done so well. I really love that. And we just got like a schlocky kind of Sports Center highlight vibe a little bit. I wanted some space. I wanted us to contemplate this huge historical figure, right? And in the first 2 hours, we didn't get enough space. And I wanted, right, to your point, I wanted the music to come through. I wanted there to be some sort of like new brain connections made of framing this guy. But instead, we just kind of got like a schlocky highlight reel with interviews.
Yeah, when they played Rakim and LL during those highlights of Jordan's games, it made sense from 1985, 1986, when those occurred. Yeah. But again, they were not associated at the time at all.
Yeah.
It felt like it felt like retro, like those songs were associated with his clothing, with fandom, but they weren't associated
his
with
culture.
what happened on the court.
Right. And you don't have to have Puffy. You don't have to lead with Puff or Bad Boy, and we don't have to have rap. And I almost see like, okay, like the Rakim thing is kind of joyous, and
I didn't have a problem with the musical selections. It just was weird to me because I've never thought of Celtics games with Michael Jordan aligned with Rakim.
Yeah, I thought this documentary could have been done better. You're right, and it could have fit better. It just felt jarring. We were thinking about things that we shouldn't have been thinking about, and I think the whole Friday Night Lights explosions in the sky thing feels very outdated now. But I wanted some sort of gravity and some sort of like set the stage for me, man. Like, give me, like, could you get a Wyden and Kennedy Nike person involved in the room? And I think Jordan picked this director because he had done the Iverson documentary and he really loved that. But I was looking for a little bit of beauty because we've seen that in Michael Jordan ads.
Yeah, it didn't really have beauty. I think that's true. I liked when you saw footage from early in the 1997 season of him playing in, a road game against the Clippers. Like, that to me was more interesting than sort of the lionizing material. Mm-hmm. Like, just like the day-to-day of being Michael Jordan in the NBA.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I wanted, yep.
To your point, maybe it could have been a little more cinematic.
Yeah. Like, I wanted him to be alone at some point, and if you just had him alone with some nice, patient music, and then had footage of him as a young man, like, tears come in, right? Like, you're dealing with a lifetime, and I know we have 8 hours to go, but the first 2 hours are really crucial to set up this story for us, and it didn't really... I didn't bite the bait. I didn't take the bait.
I enjoyed it. I liked watching it. I'll watch the rest of it. I think it was good. I also took some moments when they're talking about the cocaine circus, and Jordan has a line about going in and people are doing lines and smoking and, oh, that's not for me. It was before I would drink, as he's got, like, you know, that a nice thing of Cincoro tequila next to him. And I like, give us more of that. Give us more about that context of how there was all this hysteria about NBA players and how much they were freebasing and like, oh, so that was it? You went in there and you didn't do it? Or did you, you know, like talk about that. That's interesting.
Yes. And yeah. And
so you're saying your teammates were just getting high all the time, doing tons of lines.
Yeah.
And just blow all over the place. And that was the NBA and you just weren't part of that? Or did you indulge? I mean, he's not going to say that, but like, what happened?
I know, and it's 10
Did
hours.
Did your teammates stop doing it?
And there was a rumor about the flu game that we've heard for decades that he was hungover. You know, that he didn't actually have the flu. Like, these are all things that we understand already that we're never going to get the answer to, and he would never tell us.
I'm just saying, give us more juicy stuff.
Yeah, so to be the opposite, to have the opposite take of my original one, like, okay, if we're not going to get the cinematic cut to black and white stuff, which could be dicey, then give us like 10 hours of like straight up mixed down rap music, like boom bap, like nonstop.
Give me some gossip.
Yeah, do it for real, and I don't know if we're going to get that because he had a lot to do with this, the making of this, but
and also so did the NBA and so did ESPN. They are clearly not going to say, okay, here's who was the bag man.
Yes, right.
Like, where's all the stuff that Jason Williams was talking about? The plane full of guys who wore, you know, pork pie hats and looked like Goldie that enforced for Jordan. Where's all that?
Yes, show us, right? Like, I feel like Jordan was trying to, like, shape the way we feel about it, being like, oh, you're not gonna like me. I'm too focused. I'm too demanding of the best performance of my peers. And after watching the first 2 hours, I'm like, that's not the feeling I get. I have the feeling like you're dodging around tons of stuff.
And then, of course, during and after it, you had the boomers out in full force. And, like, the wannabe boomers. You know, Kendrick Perkins, like, decided of something yelling about load management. I'm like, you played in 2018, dude. Like, right. you're just cosplaying as a boomer? You know, you were born in like 1985 or something. You were still in high school then. Like, what are we pretending? You entered the NBA in 2004. Like, this is not your generation.
Calling young people soft is the safest place to reside in society. And even in NBA Twitter society, saying the players, the current great players right now are soft is vanilla without the spice, you know, and he won't get any clapback from that because people will be like, yes.
Yeah, that was weird. But again, it was across the board. Just, oh, today's players, this, what. That's why it was cool that Lambeer came out the other day and said what he did.
I mean, the next 2 episodes are going to be about the bad boys, I think, right?
I think that's what the previews were showing, right?
Why are they wasting 2 hours on the bad boys? But that's an interesting team. It's going to be a lot of Isaiah Thomas being like, we were called the bad boys.
Give us more of comedian John Sally.
That's the spider.
Stand-up comedian.
I'm looking forward to this. This is a really nice thing to have.
No, yeah, I'm into it. I feel like you've been grousing about it, but I know you're excited to watch the rest of it too.
absolutely, I recommend it to everybody. And the grousing is a joyful grousing.
A joyful grouse. Cookies.
Cookies.